Hey neighbor, it's Jim. I'm using this YouTube channel to spread my ideas about neighborly politics, about how America bridges the divisions between our states and cultures, and how we can keep those bridges healthy. I've previously said that one of the most important things we need to do to keep our politics neighborly is to compromise, and that might surprise some people. Compromise can be a dirty word, especially if you compromise on your integrity, your principles, or your faith. But in other things, compromise is important. If you compromise with your neighbor, with your spouse, with your siblings, or with your parents, you're doing the hard work of living together. Compromise can be invaluable to our ability to live and love, even and especially when we compromise about things that are really important to us. In fact, compromise is why this nation even exists. Without compromise, we would be a bunch of small, squabbling states dominated by foreign countries. Let's go back to the Constitutional Convention. In 1783, the Treaty of Paris was signed, ending the Revolutionary War. Within several years, the 13 colonies, now independent states, had adopted the Articles of Confederation, a weak document intended to ensure that no tyranny could arise from a powerful central government. However, the Articles were so weak that they could not truly govern the United States. States could not be compelled to provide taxes to the central government, Congress could not regulate foreign or interstate trade, and no changes could be made or enforcement action taken without unanimous approval by the states. These articles needed to change, and everyone knew it. So when the Constitutional Convention of 1787 convened in Philadelphia, they decided to throw away the Articles completely and make a new frame of government, the Constitution. This Constitution created the United States as we know it, and gave the federal government the power to tax, fund the military, regulate trade, and generally be an effective government capable of actually enforcing its laws. However, a major problem arose. Delegates from the larger states were passionate advocates of democracy and wanted representation in Congress to reflect the state's population. Delegates from smaller states, however, feared that if representation in Congress was based on population, states like Delaware would see their sovereignty trampled and their interests constantly overruled by the larger states. They favored giving equal representation to each state, arguing that each state was legally equal to another. The larger states had suggested the Virginia Plan, which called for proportional representation, while the smaller states had suggested the New Jersey Plan, which called for equal representation. This was the most time-consuming issue the convention faced. For weeks, the delegates were at it like hammer and tongs, and near the end, the rhetoric got fiery. During the convention's debate on June 29, 1787, Massachusetts delegate Elbridge Gerry mocked the small states' idea of sovereignty, saying, quote, that we were never independent states, were not such now, and never could be, even on the principles of the Confederation. The states and the advocates for them were intoxicated with the idea of their sovereignty, unquote. This seems to confirm the small states' fears that their interests would never be respected. The next day, Gunning Bedford Jr. of Delaware responded by saying that if large states pursue their plan to remove equal representation, quote, the small ones will find some foreign ally of more honor and good faith who will take them by the hand and do them justice, unquote. This seemed to suggest to the large states that the small states would never truly embrace democratic norms and would rather ally themselves with foreigners than with Americans. Each side was passionate about a really good thing. The large states wanted a more true democracy, and the small states wanted to protect their interests and sovereignty. These delegates were doing their job, advocating for exactly what their states and populations wanted. There was no backing down, so what did they do? They created the Connecticut Plan, also called the Great Compromise, creating the two houses of Congress. The lower house of Congress, the House of Representatives, would have proportional representation, with adjustments based on the number of enslaved people, while the upper house, the Senate, would have equal representation by long-serving and independent senators. This bicameral legislature ensured that laws would have to be approved by both a house very responsive to the people and by a house responsive to states' needs. It was the perfect compromise, and although it barely got enough support to pass, it ultimately paved the way for the Constitution's passing and ratification. Without the Great Compromise, either Mr. Gerry and others like him would have continued to despise the small states and their needs, or Mr. Bedford and others like him would have invited foreign powers to start meddling in America. The states would have started to fighting each other, and our entire history would have been vastly different. Instead, we compromised, and because we compromised, our founding fathers gave us a cobbled together piece of genius that has worked for hundreds of years to provide us a more perfect union. So what does that tell us today? We're all really passionate about our ideas, and we should be. We want our politicians to advocate for our community's needs, and they should. But at the end of the day, once the rhetoric has been spoken and the political points have been made, most issues will be compromised, and that's okay. Most budgets will make no one really happy, and most laws will be either slightly too strong or slightly too weak for anyone's tastes. That's the nature of governing a diverse republic like ourselves. So here's my assignment for you. Think of an issue you're passionate about. Think of your opponent's positions and consider what might be a healthy compromise. What good thing are you trying to accomplish? What good thing could they be trying to accomplish? And how can you accomplish some of both? Respond in the comments below. This is the heart of neighborly politics, recognizing that we have to work together. We're living together, we're part of one nation, one union, and although part of that union means we respect each other's spaces, we also need to compromise and work together like true neighbors. Thanks, and God bless.